Right to item 5, Senator Weiner. That's SB 961, as you know, and you're welcome to present on this one.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And again, I want to thank you and your staff for working with us. And we've taken a number of amendments as author amendments ahead of time, but they were worked out with the committee, and we really appreciate that. And just to be clear, the most significant of those amendments is taking the bill from what we call an active speed governor requirement to a passive speed governor requirement. Active means that you are physically impeded from going above a certain speed. Passive means that you are notified and reminded when you're going above a certain speed. So the bill is now passive. SB 961, like the bill we just heard, addresses the traffic safety crisis in California, and does so this time not from a street design perspective, but from the actual vehicle. SB 961 requires this common sense technology, a passive speed governor, which has already been recommended. Just to be clear, the National Transportation Safety Board, the NTSB, which is here today, which is the top transportation safety agency in the country, has recommended this technology for all new cars in the U.S. and has submitted a letter supporting this bill, and you'll hear from the NTSB today. And SB 961 will require all passenger vehicles, trucks and buses that are manufactured or sold in California to be equipped with a passive speed governor, otherwise known as an intelligent speed assistance system, to warn the driver when they are traveling faster than 5 miles an hour above the speed limit. Half of vehicles manufactured or sold will have to have a passive speed governor by 2029 and 100% by 2032. I want to be clear that this is established technology. This is not some sort of new technology. It's established technology that is already in vehicles in this country and other parts of the world. The EU has required speed governors. The city of New York is in the process of equipping its entire municipal fleet, thousands of cars so far, with active speed governors, and that has gone very, very well with a very high degree of accuracy in terms of the GPS. We should do so here in California for all new cars manufactured or sold here. 4,000 people a year are dying on California roads, as I mentioned with the last bill. Nearly 50,000 people a year in the U.S. That is an increase both in California and nationally over the last 5 or 6 years. And I want to be very clear, it's not normal. And we should never accept this as normal. Every one of those people who dies is someone's child, parent, friend, spouse, and it changes their family forever. And the numbers are going up. And when you compare the U.S. to other wealthy nations, we are definitely not normal. We are an extreme outlier. It is not this way in other countries. And we know that speed is a significant factor. And I understand that people like to be able to go as fast as they want to go, and all we're saying is let's do a reminder when you are going significantly above the speed limit so that you can be reminded to slow down. I respectfully ask for an aye vote, and I neglected to mention the other piece of the bill in terms of side guards for trucks. We're actually passing around a photo of what it looks like when a car and a truck collide and the car ends up underneath the truck, which significantly, dramatically increases the risk of the person dying or being very seriously injured. And this is, again, existing technology that will prevent cars from going underneath the side of the truck. I respectfully ask for an aye vote. With me today to testify are Ellen Lee with the National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, and Mark Vukovich with Streets for All.
Welcome, Ms. Lee, and Mr. Vukovich. You may proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair Cortese and members of the committee. My name is Ellen Lee, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak here today on SB 961 and in support of NTSB's recommendation on the implementation of Intelligent Speed Assistance, or ISA, systems in all new vehicles. The NTSB has long supported ISA, and since 2012 has recommended the adoption of the technology. Speed is a contributing factor in nearly 30% of all roadway fatalities. This is unacceptable. The NTSB continues to investigate major crashes where speed was a causal or contributing factor, including one in Avenel, California in 2020. Some of these involve drivers going double or triple the speed limit. We recently investigated a crash in Nevada where a speeding and impaired driver ran a red light, causing 9 fatalities. This led the NTSB to issue new recommendations, one to NHTSA to require ISA technology in all new vehicles that at a minimum warns the driver when the vehicle exceeds the speed limit, and one to vehicle manufacturers to implement ISA as standard equipment in new vehicles. Broad deployment of ISA will reduce the frequency of speeding and speeding-related crashes, like this one, saving lives and preventing injuries. While this technology may sound too new to require in all new vehicles, it is already an option offered by many U.S. manufacturers for commercial and passenger vehicles and has been available in European countries for years. ISA will soon be mandatory in all vehicles sold in the European Union, yet NHTSA has been slow to take any meaningful action. ISA is a proven countermeasure that, if widely deployed, will save lives on California roads, and we applaud you for considering this policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
Good afternoon, Mark Fuchsovich, Streets for All, sponsor of the bill. I'm here today because of one simple but devastating fact. Traffic violence has become the #1 cause of death for California school-age children. It's not drugs, it's not guns, it's getting hit by a car. And for context, the societal cost of car crashes is more than the cost of wildfires, it's more than the cost of cancer. Pedestrian deaths in this country have shot up 77% since 2010. And that fact I mentioned earlier was actually incomplete. Traffic violence is the #1 killer of all people from the age of 5 to 44. And that #1 factor in car crashes is not impaired driving or texting, but speed. And the public at a high level is aware of this. I believe that if the public was asked, they want the legislature to tackle the #1 killer of adults and children in California. The largest factor that parents cite in allowing their children to walk to school or not is not whether that child's going to get kidnapped on their way to school. It's that worry that their child's going to die walking to school. After fuel efficiency, safety is the largest factor people cite when choosing whether or not to buy a car. The public has a right to feel safe on our roadways, and I believe that the public contract is broken on our roadways. Has anyone driven on the highways recently? It's madness the way people are driving right now on our roadways. The legislature cannot pass a bill tomorrow to cut the amount of cancer in half, but the legislature can act on this issue area. That's what the European Union has done, requiring this on all their vehicles in their 27-member countries with a total population of 440 million people, and that's with countries that have a car culture like Italy and Germany. Speed assistance technology is just like seatbelt warning signal technology that, like airbags and rear backup cameras, was also opposed by the auto industry but has saved countless lives. Lastly, I'll leave you with some numbers. In just 2021, in Pico Rivera, 221 people were injured or killed on the streets. In the city of Napa, 327 people were injured or killed on the streets. And in the city of Fullerton, 988 people were injured or killed on the streets. I ask you to take action. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other support witnesses in the committee room who would like to come forward and express their support? If so, please come on up with name, affiliation, and support.
Janie Woodwaller with CalBike, I support. Grace Nelson, on behalf of Streets for Everyone, I support.
Kate Fifilova, Vision Zero Network, and support.
Laura Tolkoff with Spur and support.
Jody Medeiros, Walk San Francisco, one of the bill sponsors, and support.
Robin Pam, Kid Safe San Francisco, in support.
Zach Deitch Gross, Transform, in support.
Dan Allison, in support.
All right, seeing no other support witnesses, we'll move to opposition now. I believe we have Kurt Augustine, Alliance for Automotive Innovation, and Chris Shimoda coming forward. Welcome, gentlemen. You can proceed as soon as you get situated. A couple minutes each, please.
Mr. Chair and members, my name is Kurt Augustine. I'm the Senior Director of Government Affairs for the Alliance for Automotive Innovation. Thank you for the opportunity to this. We are in opposition to this bill not because safety is not the highest priority for the automobile industry, but it's a premature solution. This is not our sole position, but it is the position of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, to which the board has made its recommendations. With all due respect to the prior speaker, NHTSA on April 3rd issued a letter saying that they are researching this important topic. They have ongoing research right now to do so, and they believe that ultimately the technology will be in place, but to do as their role as the regulator for traffic safety, believe it is premature to do so. Many of the reasons that they cite are because the technology is developing, but it's also because that our infrastructure, unfortunately here in the United States, is not up to par as to what it is in the European Union. The European Union signed, and their member countries signed the Vienna Convention that it makes all their signage the same, makes all this program available. We have manufacturers who sell the same exact car in the United States and in Europe. And because of the lack of proper infrastructure and regular infrastructure here in the United States, they have to turn these features off because they don't work, or customers are so annoyed with the false warnings that they find it, very troubling. So this is an important issue that is premature. And finally, the rules are for the European continent. Germany does not have a separate set of rules. France does not have a separate set of rules. It is for the entire continent. So for California to have one set of rules and having all the other vehicles coming into our state, it's an unworkable solution. It's premature. Let's let NHTSA do their work, and we are working with the administration to set real rules for safety for our roads. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Cortese and members. Chris Shimoda with the California Trucking Association in respectful opposition to SB 961. So as the committee analysis notes, pursuant to the National Motor Traffic and Vehicle Safety Act of 1966 and successor federal legislation, NHTSA, which has already been referenced, is charged by Congress with writing and enforcing federal motor vehicle safety standards. The act expressly preempts states from adopting their own standards, and NHTSA has taken the view in an opinion letter cited in our opposition letter that Congress intended the agency to occupy the field of motor vehicle safety even where NHTSA has yet to promulgate a standard. For trucking, in the case of both underride guards and speed notification or limiters, NHTSA currently has open rulemakings. CTA's federal partners at the American Trucking Associations are on record supporting the federal rule on speed limiters and are participants in NHTSA's Underride Advisory Committee, which is currently meeting and was mandated by the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act to provide advice and recommendations to the Secretary of Transportation on safety regulations to reduce underride crashes and fatalities related to underride crashes. This work will inform underride solutions for dozens of use cases with unique equipment as diverse as port chassis, fuel tankers, construction equipment, ag equipment, refuse haulers, as well as many more, dozens of others. As with all federal rules, NHTSA will base its rulemaking on extensive quantitative research, data, and analysis. Rather than creating a competing process with NHTSA, which is a billion-dollar agency with over half a century of experience establishing motor vehicle safety standards, we encourage the author and sponsors to continue to support NHTSA's ongoing research and rulemaking. For those reasons, we respectfully request a no vote. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there others here who wish to express an opposed position? We see folks coming forward.
Yes, Mr. Chair and members, Brian White, on behalf of the Pacific Merchant Shipping Association, we have an opposed unless amended position to exempt intermodal chassis from the side guards. Thank you.
Steve Wallach on behalf of the Institute of International Container Leasers in opposition. Thanks.
Karen Schmelzer with Motorcycle Industry Council, opposed unless amended.
Christian Robinson with SEMA, the Specialty Equipment Market Association, opposed.
Dylan Ellie on behalf of Shasta County, respectfully opposed.
Dean Sally with the California Manufacturers and Technology Association, respectfully opposed.
Ken Stanhope with the California New Car Dealers in opposition. Thank you.
Melanie Perrin on behalf of the Associated General Contractors in opposition.
David Gonzalez on behalf of the Truck and Engine Manufacturers Association in opposition.
Brady Van England on behalf of the California Chamber of Commerce in opposition.
Theo Pejos representing Ford in opposition.
Mr. Chair, Member Dominic Damari here on behalf of BMW in opposition.
All right, seeing no other opposition testimony at this time, we'll come back to the committee. Questions and comments, Senator Archuleta?
Senator, I'd like to tell you, I'm going to have to lay off this bill. It should be a two-part bill, one pertaining to the governor and being able to slow the vehicle down because of safety and speed and so on. And I'm all for that. But the bill also includes the fact that we have the trucking industry that in Southern California, and you have it here in Northern California, the trucking industry that's got to move goods and from the ports, and these trucks that you pictured, these 18-wheelers, the truck itself, they stack them up, and they move them on rail. And with the guard things on the side, they're not going to be able to stack them, so it's going to cause a problem when they're mandated to do that. So I recommend that you separate the bill, and we look at that separately, and then I could probably go on the bill. So with this, I can't, so I'm going to have to stay off on that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. If I could interpret that as a question and respond.
Well, whichever.
Okay. No, I appreciate that. We did, the trucking industry came in, it was about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago to meet with me, various stakeholders from the industry, and did raise the issue about stacking in ports. We've actually distributed a photo that shows them being stacked with these underguards. But we committed to the trucking industry listen, I don't want to pass an aspect of a bill that can't be implemented. I don't want to do that as a lawmaker, and so we are actively looking into their concerns and have committed to continue to engage with them on it. But I appreciate that feedback.
Thank you.
Senator Neal will be next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it seems like every Transportation Committee meeting we have, we entertain proposals to try to control the crazy driving that's going out on our streets right now. And I've talked about this just about every time because it's not just speeding, it's reckless driving, rapid lane changing, tailgating seems almost habitual with some, seems almost a deliberate lawlessness, and I've begun to conclude that because when I'm driving in the morning when traffic is heavy and the HOV lane is moving quickly, I'm looking in my rear view mirror to the passenger seat of the vehicle that's going by me. And my unscientific estimation is that roughly half of the vehicles do not have a passenger in the passenger seat. That is a deliberate violation. I'm not a big fan of HOV lanes, but it's the law, and I observe it, and that is a habitual violation. A lot of upscale cars have the heads-up display on the windshield, and it does show the speed limit in the area you're driving. Sometimes it can be inaccurate, but on the freeways it's accurate. And a lot of the cars that I see speeding by me at 80, 90 miles an hour generally are more expensive vehicles. And I suspect a lot of them already have that heads-up display, and they don't care. They're deliberately breaking the law. Over time, probably more cars will have that as they do in Europe. But I'm unconvinced that it's going to make a difference. And every time we entertain these proposals to try to control the crazy driving that's going on, and I say that because it's not just speeding, I've yet to see a proposal that we increase enforcement. And we are hundreds of positions shy of our highway patrol force. And the governor has even diverted a bunch of them to retail theft enforcement, which is not their mission. And I'm waiting for somebody to come say, we need more cops on the road. We need to stop people more for this driving behavior. And I think eventually, I realize that's costly. We have a budget problem. But I'm convinced that eventually that's the only solution that's going to work.
Next up is Senator Newman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Winter, you and I spoke, I think, last week, and we were talking about the intelligent speed assistance system. And my understanding is that you've taken an amendment to go from active to passive. But my question is, that passive system, would it be persistent, or would it be momentary? Where, when I exceeded some limit, would I get a beep, or would I get a persistent alarm?
The bill language is not hyper prescriptive in terms of what that has to be, and so there would be flexibility there. And so we're not trying to sort of micromanage what that would be. And again, this is existing technology that's in cars now, and there is a spectrum, right? It could be like every time you exceed the limit, it reminds you. It could be on a more persistent basis, but we're not overly prescriptive in the language of the bill.
It seems like from the driver's experience, there's a huge difference there, right, especially on the highway. Mr. Augustine, could you speak to this?
Yes, there are, Senator Wiener is correct. A lot of these features are in cars, and our automakers are proud to have developed and put them in there. But because of the differences between the European system and, again, with the uniform signage and better other technological issues, these challenges that exist with the warnings, they're often wrong here in the United States. They will continue to remind you the vehicles are designed, you can shut it off. But it's been our company's experience that, and in fact, there are many people in this room who have anecdotally told me they have these features on their car and they turn them off because they don't work well here. And so it's a challenge for our country to properly implement this. And it's not something that just one state is able to solve on its own.
All right, thank you.
And Senator, I just want to sort of respond to that. So as I mentioned at the beginning, New York City is equipping its entire massive municipal fleet with active governors, so what we took out of our bill, active governors. They already, several thousand vehicles have already been equipped. And according to New York City, the accuracy rate in terms of the speed is, I believe, over 99%, if I recall correctly. It's very high. And so I don't agree with the argument this is somehow some sort of untested. It's not possible to do it well in the U.S. And I don't know if you want to add to that.
I would like to add as well that as of, I believe, the 1940s or 1950s, in the United States, we have something called the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices that regulates that every single signage in the entire United States on city roads have to be conformed to the same exact standards. And that's with the entire United States. Every single state, including Alaska and Hawaii, have to meet those standards. And so on that note, I'm a little bit confused about the opposition's comments as well. And additionally, most of these speed governor systems on the intelligence side, that they also use geolocation. It's a GPS-based system. So additionally on the signage, I just want to add that it's duplicative. Lastly, I'll say that in our bill, it specifically mentions that if there is any type of momentarily confusion that the system has, that it reverts to the highest speed limit in California, essentially, so that there is no moment of kind of getting a persistent warning that you're supposed to be driving 20 miles per hour while you're on a 45-mile-per-hour road.
I appreciate it. I guess the thing I'm kind of wrestling with is how drivers will actually respond to what they will receive as really invasive technology, right? So to Senator Wiener's example, if I drive for a company, I have to allow that the company has some oversight over my behavior as a condition of my employment. But if it's my car, it seems unlikely to me that a lot of Californians are going to buy a car where the speed alarm is persistent, where you can't turn it off. It seems to me that they will either figure out a way to disable that or find a third party to disable that, or they won't buy that car. So it raises the question, is that the best solution to that problem?
Well, there have been studies, and I don't have them at my fingertips at the moment, that these systems actually do cause people to drive slow.
I know, and I saw in the notes that the study in Europe saw no significant difference between a momentary beep, you've exceeded the speed limit, versus a persistent beep. But I guarantee you, the persistent beep is not the car that people want to buy. Right. So the base of my question is, would you allow for the least common denominator there, which is the non-persistent beep, as part of your amended version?
Yeah, and we're happy to have that conversation with you, Senator. I know we started it. Right now, the bill is not prescriptive. We're trying to provide some flexibility, but we're happy to have that conversation. I don't know if the NTSB has any thoughts on that particular issue. You don't have to if you don't want to.
Yeah, we have not been prescriptive either in terms of the types of warnings. Generally speaking, warnings are most effective when they're multimodal, so if you have a visual and an audio warning versus just one or the other, but our recommendations are not specific to that.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
Senator Portantino.
Thank you, Mr. Weiner. And Mr. Chair, many people know that I'm an avid bike rider and share the concerns of street safety and road safety and the spirit behind the bill. I do have a couple questions, because my hope, obviously, is if the bill passes, it's implementable, it's doable, it's not just a concept. And so a couple questions. By the way, in my own household, the intermittent complaints of my family in driving with me is more powerful than persistence, so just for the record. But the analysis and the bill references a report from Caltrans back. Is that on the effectiveness of the warning system or on the side guards? What's the reports that are coming back, the study, the pilot, is it on both? So how are we going to measure the effectiveness? That's question number one. It says Caltrans is going to report back.
Okay. That the bill also requires a pilot program for state vehicles, and that's the report back.
And the pilot is on the warning system or on the effectiveness of the side guards?
The state fleet pilot program is an active speed governor.
So just on the state fleet, that's the report.
Right, and we put that in. It's not a mandate for the entire fleet. It's a pilot program. We put that in because in our work with the committee, we took out active and put in passive, and so we decided let's have a pilot program of state vehicles, so we can,
So that's on the active system?
Yes, for the state vehicle fleet pilot program.
Is there going to be any analysis of the passive system or on the effectiveness of the side guards?
It's not in there now, but I wouldn't have a problem with that. So
that's something you may want to look at.
Yeah, we're happy to consider that. I don't have any issue with that. Data is always a good thing.
Data is always good. And then on the federal issue, are you at all concerned with federal preemption? And how will this mesh down the road when the federal government weighs in with specificity?
Well, okay, a couple of things. First of all, if the federal government were to say we're going to implement this nationally and preempt everything at a state level, I would applaud that, because that would mean not just 40 million Californians, but 330 million, I think, Americans would be protected. So the federal government does have the power to preempt a safety standard like this. The federal government has not done that. And in fact, when the federal government recently, I don't know how recently, but enacted truck rear guard requirements for vehicles, the NHTSA acknowledged that most states, I think a majority of states, already had state-level truck rear guard requirements. And that it was preempting those requirements. So it is not new for a state to get ahead of the federal government to catch up and preempt. In fact, I did some research actually last night about this. I've been looking into the history of seatbelt requirements. I believe Wisconsin was the first state to require seatbelts in new cars. In 1961, Wisconsin enacted that. I believe the federal government mandated seatbelts in the front seats of cars in 1968. So again, Wisconsin got ahead of the federal government, and I'm assuming there was a preemption in 1968.
All right, and then my final question is along the lines of what Mr. Archuleta raised on the stacking issue and the drayage transportation. Again, if it turns out to be infeasible to do from a practical perspective, you're open to exempting out those particular.
Yeah, so we are. I made a commitment to the trucking industry when we met with them a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, that we would look closely at the concerns that they were raising around feasibility. I have no desire to be the author of a law that has an infeasible provision in it. I would never want to do that. And so I have committed, and I keep my commitment, and reiterated today, to work with the trucking industry to figure out what's actually happening here. We've showed that photo where they are stacked, but
and obviously they have one where they can't.
Right.
Yeah.
And so if it turns out that there's something that's infeasible, we will absolutely address that, because I'm not going to try to force someone to do something that's impossible to do.
And that brings me to my final question is, so what will be the arbitrator of that final decision? Who will decide whether it's feasible or infeasible? How if at the end of the day one says yes, one says no, who makes the final decision on whether it's actually implementable?
The legislature. So
legislature.
I'm
just talking about as the author of the bill. How would you resolve an impasse in that particular?
I think we need to figure out what the facts are and what that impasse is. My hope is that there's not an impasse, because hopefully we're all rational actors, and so we're gonna continue our conversation with the trucking industry, and the industry has my commitment on that.
And I just want that particular piece to be honestly brokered.
And we will keep you in the loop on it.
All right.
And you as well, Senator.
Next is Senator Sayarto, followed by Senator Blakespeare.
First, I wanted to talk a little bit about the protection guards on the trucks in the long haul. A lot of times on those trailers, they have a big tail swing. And if you're going over hills or down through dips, those can actually catch and basically high side what you call a vehicle. And we had a fire engine get stuck on a hill like this because it couldn't make the dip, and so it was stuck there until we could get a crane large enough to try and pull it out. So how do you has that been addressed in the studies that are talking about these things? Because there is uneven terrain that a lot of vehicles have to go through, especially trucks when they're delivering into neighborhoods or areas where there's uneven terrain, like, say, Baldwin Hills.
Yeah, I'll ask Mr. Vuksevich to talk about that.
So I don't have research to cite, but you're mentioning tail swings, and I just want to clarify that these devices are placed between the two wheel axles, and so that tail swing issue isn't going to necessarily be affected by this particular issue. I'd also mention that these wheels don't, these devices don't go, below the length of the wheels, and so it is kind of the expected, horizontal axes that the truck is expected to be driving. And I say this as someone who used to be driving at least box trucks, not big rigs.
That's it. From the trucking industry, what's your take on what I was talking about?
So, Senator, that's exactly what we referred to in the testimony. There is an federally mandated advisory committee on underride guards. It consists of crash experts, safety advocates, as well as the industry and the manufacturers, to go through every facet of underride, every different type of equipment, to figure out what the proper solution is for each of these various equipment types. And I stated some of them in the comments, but there are literally dozens of different types of trailers that need to be dealt with in an eventual rule, and NHTSA is currently deliberating on those.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Now on to the speed, the thing that lets you know that you're going too fast. And I might have missed part of this, and I apologize. I was trying to watch most of it on the screen while I was doing what I was doing. So So you're going down, let's just choose a freeway, the 50. Everybody's doing 75 if they're not doing 80. And everybody knows it. If you have one of these on your vehicle, is this going to be constantly beeping at you as you're going down the freeway? Or is there a way to disable it, or you have to turn your music way up?
You can always turn your music way up, but we did discuss this, that the language of the bill is not hyper-prescriptive. Right. So there could be a range of approaches to it. So it's not, we intentionally were not hyper-prescriptive about what the exact frequency would be.
Right, because that seems like a huge distraction, especially as you're going through some of the areas of the freeway, and people are in pretty close proximity to each other, and when the thing starts beeping at you, and people start honking out there for various reasons, and those are distractions from a person that can cause them to not be paying attention. And especially when they're going at those speeds, they really need to be paying attention.
Well, it would be safest if they were not driving 90 miles an hour, for example.
Right.
I just want to, when we're talking about safety, that's sort of the fundamental issue. And I also want to, and Senator Nielo raised this earlier.
I was here when.
Yeah, and a different issue about. About just people are doing their thing and violating the law in a lot of ways. I do want to say, though, that especially with newer cars, it's really easy, even when you don't realize it, to be going a lot faster than you think you're going. The new car, it's just so smooth and it's quieter. And so there are times when people are not even intending to drive at an excessive speed, and they just are. And there are people who, yeah, exactly, new cars. And I think there are a lot of people who would appreciate being alerted, like you're going too fast. So I don't think everyone who's speeding is doing it intentionally because they want to violate the law. Some people don't even realize it, and warning them will cause them to slow down.
Right, and if they do the drastic slowdown though to respond and stop the beeping, the rest of the freeway is still going 75, 80 miles an hour. Now what?
It doesn't have to be.
You're a traffic hazard and traffic impediment.
Well, I mean, people slow down all the time. There are times when people realize, oh my God, I'm going 85 miles an hour. I don't want to do that, and then they slow down. It doesn't mean they don't need to slam on their brakes. You can slow down.
You just take your foot off the pedal. That's what I tell people.
Yeah, or you just smoothly, So I don't see that as a slowing down and speeding up as a normal thing that happens.
If you're doing 55 and the speed limit is posted at 60 or 65, and you go to 65, and everybody else is doing 80, you're a hazard. So you either have to speed up or get way over in the slow lane, and you're still a hazard on some of the freeways I drive. So I can see it. So that's my concern. I think everybody knows when they're speeding. There are enough telltale signs, and I don't think that this is necessarily going to do anything but distract people and could potentially cause accidents. And if they're the only ones going not with the flow of traffic, they become a hazard themselves.
I also just do want to point out that this is not just about freeways. This is also about city surface streets, where if someone is driving even 10 or 15 miles an hour over the speed limit, which we tolerate more on freeways, but happens on city streets. Kids can be playing out in the street, seniors are crossing the street, and that is incredibly dangerous, and it's good to warn people that they're doing that.
Yeah, and then you have the thing going beep, beep, beep while you're trying to navigate all this and keep an eye on everybody.
You slow down.
Yeah, and but you can still, you still get distracted. So anyway, thank you very much. I appreciate your answers.
One more comment.
Let me go to Senator Blakespear, and then I'll come back to you, Senator Archuleta.
It's brief. Thank you. I have had some outreach about the guardrail provisions when it comes to waste hauler trucks. And I know there are lots of different things that would be considered, but I don't know if you have anything specific on that, that particular type of truck.
I don't think we've gotten specific outreach. Looking at my staff, I don't think we've gotten specific outreach from the waste haulers. We're happy to talk to them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Senator Archuleta.
We heard about the beeping noise and the warning and so on, But if I may to my colleagues in the experts, a governor actually stops. And you can push on the accelerator all you want, and it's not going to respond because it's set to a certain speed. The question is, where's the technology on my car when I'm in a school district? There's a little sign, school zone, and it points that out. And I go into a business zone, and there's a little sign on my dashboard, zoning. But as if I accelerate to get on the freeway, I have the power to accelerate. But if there's a governor on there, it's going to stop the acceleration. Would you, with your witness there, give me some definition of that a governor truly is, something that a mechanism that prevents the foot pedal, the accelerator go down and move the car?
Yes, yes, that is what a speed governor
An active
does.
speed governor.
Well, an active governor.
Which is not in this bill.
I was going to know. So I'll answer your question, then I will add just what Senator Winter said. So yes, a governor would control the speed, and it sets a maximum thing. And there are those devices on vehicles, now especially on commercial vehicles. They don't want their employees driving over a certain speed limits. And to Senator Wiener's point, that was the essence of the original version of the bill. That is, to be fair, that is not what then is in the bill currently. Yeah.
So it's just the warning.
The warning.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And then the other thing, I thank you, Senator, for bringing this up, because we had an incident in my city with this huge cement tube that is going to be used, and the truck, the bottom of the trailer goes like this and up, and it hit the railroad embankment and stopped traffic. We had the highway patrol there, the sheriff's there, fire department there, because it got stuck, and the train was coming. And literally, it was finally moved within minutes when the train didn't. So somebody didn't tell the train, and it went by. So I did witness that. So there's a lot of obstacles still there. And I talked originally about the stacking, which has to do with economics and moving cargo, but then there's the others. So there's still issues in the bill, and that's, again, with all due respect, I'm going to lay off.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you. It appears to conclude committee comment other than the chair. And I just want to thank the author for, again, working with us. And I know you mentioned that at the outset of your presentation to get your own author amendments done. There wasn't a lack of interest or concern by the committee staff or the chair regarding the side rail issue. For whatever that's worth, but I do think it's important to put on the record. I think we had our hands full dealing with the passive intelligence speed system and trying to help work out appropriate language there. And it was presumed that as you move along with this, that you'll sort out these issues regarding the side rails. But we were made aware of concerns, and I know that we had some discussions about that. And again, I just wanted to get that on the record. I appreciate your indicating that you'll continue to work with folks on that as the author. And with that, you're welcome to close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, I really appreciate the robust discussion. I think we can all agree we want our roads to be safer. We shifted from active to passive. We heard feedback from colleagues that people were not comfortable with an active physical barrier to going above a certain speed, and some of the sort of scenarios, sometimes edge cases, but nevertheless scenarios where people might need to go at a higher speed. We listened, we heard, worked with the committee and changed it to a passive to make sure that people are aware and reminded so that they slow down. And I will reiterate on the trucking piece that I am deeply committed to continuing engagement with the industry, and that I am not going to be pushing to pass something that is infeasible, and we'll continue that work. Like I said, I had my first meeting with them about less than 2 weeks ago. We'll continue that engagement. You have my commitment, they have my commitment, and I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
All right, thank you. We will come back. Did we have a motion on this item? Senator Portantino moves the bill, and I'll have the committee assistant formalize the motion and call the roll, please.
This is file item number 5, SB 961. The motion is due pass and will be referred to the Committee on Appropriations. Senators Cortese?
Aye.
Cortese, aye. Nilo?
No.
Nilo, no. Allen? Archuleta? Blakespear?
Aye.
Blakespear, aye. Dally? Dodd? Gonzalez? Laird? Limon? Newman? Wen? Wen, no. Portantino? Portantino, aye. Searto? Searto, no. Umberg? 3-3 on call.
All right, the vote currently is 3-3, and we leave the bill on call. We are going to recess before taking up file items